Let's now move to the Horn of Africa, that horrific bomb attack in Somalia's capital over the weekend. At least 120 people now confirmed to have died, 150 injured after twin car bombs exploded near the Education Ministry in Mogadishu on Saturday. The attack happened at the same Zobe junction in the capital, where a bomb claimed over 500 lives back in 2017. Now, Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for this act of terrorism over the weekend. This comes at the same time as the USA has warned both Nigeria and South Africa that they could be possible targets of extremist attacks. Let's get an understanding of the situation in Somalia now with Willem Els, a researcher at the Institute for Security Studies. Willem, just talk to us a little bit about Somalia. It seems that it has never really recovered its stability right from the days when Siad Barre in the early 1990s was in charge. Am I right?
Good evening to you. Yes, we are sitting there with a problem that AMISOM, the peacekeeping force that was deployed by the AU, they've been there in Somalia now for close to 15 years. And we saw that in January they handed over to ATMIS that for it's sort of a force that is going to facilitate the transitioning of power towards the Somali government, and they have a 2-year period. So we're already almost to the end of that 1 year of the 2 years, and we can see that things are really not very stable at the moment. They got a new president. We see that with the new president, he also came up with a very sort of we can say out-of-the-box thinking, where he actually appointed one of the former leaders of Al-Shabaab, Rubo, as one of his ministers in his cabinet in order to try to bring in and closer the insurgents as well and bring them closer to the government in order to stabilize the country. We see that that has not really brought about the expected results.
Do you think that Somalia could become Africa's Afghanistan?
We always want that not to happen because we saw what happened in the aftermath of Afghanistan. We also know that the Western powers, America and its allies that were there, I think they also learned some lessons from what happened in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, the way things are looking at the moment in Somalia, where we know that the government is only in control of certain parts of the country, not very many of them, and also partially in control of the capital of Mogadishu. So, yeah, things are not very good. It doesn't look very good for them.
Talk to me about Al-Shabaab, which has claimed responsibility for this attack. What are the links between Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda and Islamic State and Boko Haram, which of course we know Boko Haram is more in Nigeria? I'm just trying to get a sense of what groups are operating where, bearing in mind that we've had terror alert warnings here in South Africa this past weekend from the United States, plus a terror alert warning in Nigeria.
That's correct. Yeah, you have to understand the difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the first place. Al-Qaeda was formed by first, and they were responsible for actually the first major terror attack in African soil. That was in 1998 when we had the twin bombings in Nairobi at the American embassy, as well as in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. So that actually introduced Africa into this transnational terrorism phase that we are facing at the moment. So that is where Al-Qaeda originated. But we saw that when the Americans invaded Iraq and they got rid of Saddam Hussein, then an offspring of Al-Qaeda is ISIS. They then were formed, and they are very much more radical than Al-Qaeda. They also do not have a very good relationship with Al-Qaeda. We saw that in Somalia, that Al-Shabaab, that is actually the strongest franchise of Al-Qaeda, currently the most successful terror organization in their pool. We saw that they actually declared war on ISIS in Somalia, and they were killing each other. So they are fighting against each other. But we saw also in Mozambique, for instance, where ISIS is very strong in the north of Mozambique, ISIS in Mozambique, and also with the Central African province in DRC. We saw that they don't have a real big problem to cooperate with the other terror organizations like Al Qaeda. So it seems that when they've got a common enemy, they tend to work together, but not so much in Somalia itself.
I want us to listen to a clip of the police minister, our police minister, Becky Cele, speaking today. And of course, this is after the weekend when everything was safe and sound in Sandton, thank goodness. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say about that US terror alert on South African soil.
There was red alert made by those Americans. Almost every event in the Republic of South Africa went accordingly, without fail. And I agree that this was a black dot in that white sheet of the work that we have done. Is exactly what they've raised here, that there was a lackadaisical response. We need to go back to work on that, and we need to correct that as we're increasing the levels starting from today, but then also coming back to work with the community with the medium and long-term solutions on the matter. Indeed, that question is correct. That's what we need to find, and that's what is supposed to give us a consequential management.
What do you make of the minister's comments and looking back after the warnings before the weekend? Do you think it was a false alarm?
I think we need to unpack the events of the weekend in such a way that, you know, every country, South Africa also for that matter, have got a contingent of intelligence force services that is stationed at our embassies in foreign countries, and their main task is to gather intelligence and mainly in order to safeguard the interests of South Africa, the South African people. There's also, you know, tourists and South Africans in that country, and we see that the Americans also have the same. They are actually very active here in South Africa, as is the Brits and all the other agencies. We saw that, for instance, the information about the Tulsi twins that were convicted not so long ago did not come from our intelligence services. It came from the Americans that picked that up, and they shared it with the South African intelligence service. That came out in the court case. So, but also what we need to understand is the Americans got the information, and your standard protocols between intelligence services in these countries, and they will share. First of all, they will verify with their counterparts, like the English and the French and the Germans and all the other people that have got their services here, and then they will also share that with the South African intelligence service, because they have got their interests and the interests of the people at heart in South Africa. So it is in our interest to share with them, and in their interest also to share with us. So on futsal level, that I can assure you, protocol dictates that it should happen. Whether that was filtered all the way up to the ministers on ministerial level, we don't know. So the president actually denied that he had been informed, so that the minister in the presidency, and that is plausible. But I think the situation was more that there might have been a breakdown in communication within our services than on the American side. And I'm not standing up for the Americans. We must just understand, taking that step to put that information, that warning on their website, they must have taken all things into consideration, because they should have known and that there will be a fallout if they do that. So I can't see that they will not do that. In my days in the police service, I spent 28 years there. We frequently interacted on that level, and I can assure you that there's we don't always agree. We share, and then we layer our intelligence, and then we decide on the way forward. I think what happened in this case is that, remember, Saturday was just around the corner, and they could not afford to stall that warning any further, because they got a mandate in terms of their regulations and their counter-terrorism strategies, etc., that they have to warn their citizens if they pick up something. Because if something happened on Saturday and they did not put out that warning, there must have been, there should have been a lot of problem for them as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is just a big picture of the situation. Was it a false alarm? I don't think so. You know, they would not go to that length and to that extent if they did not have fairly credible information, because we also understood from the press that they cleared that with the English as well as the French and that even the Canadian embassies, and they all issued a warning for their people as well. So it must have been fairly credible. Why did it not happen? There's also quite a few possibilities that we can look at. If you look at, you know, the police, and I can assure you, behind the scenes, they really brought their plans together. They put some proactive and reactive measures in place. They were more visible. There were roadblocks. There were a lot of things in place. So I think that must have been a very good preventative measures that they put in place to safeguard the people of South Africa. So I don't think we can now say that there was no threat, because nothing happened.
Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening and also telling us about the situation in Somalia, where extremism really has taken a hold in that country for many years. That was Willem Els, a researcher at the Institute for Security Studies.